to
Good morning, Australia. Good evening, America. Welcome back to Radio Toni. This is a conversation with Kez, your author-specific show each and every week. Thank you to everyone who's listening live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. We have Payo from the Philippines ready and waiting to respond to your comments, questions with website links and information. Don't forget that the replay of all these shows is available on Binge TV networks across the US and on the Toni TV channel app available on Roku, LG, and Samsung smart TVs worldwide. If you want further information, if you're listening to this driving, we have all the information you seek on radiotoni.com. Now, Kez is my gorgeous co-host who joins me every week. She's an international best-selling author in her own right, and she joins me each week when we talk to new and emerging authors or authors who've been around for a while. If you want to grab any of Kez's amazing books, and she has a number of fabulous reads, just jump onto kezwickhamstgeorge.com and grab your books there. Now, today, our author is Brittany Eldridge, and Brittany is an author, mental health advocate, radio talk show host, daughter of God, and ordained minister. Brittany is a survivor of childhood trauma, mental illness, and family dysfunction. In the fall of 2019, Brittany woke at 4 a.m. with a calling to write her story to share with others. And she felt others would be able to relate to parts of her story. In the process of healing and inner child work, Brittany has relied on her faith to help her with letting go. Brittany's first memoir was typed on her Android phone miles away from home. Brittany says, each of us carries spiritual gifts, and I believe that writing has helped me express myself in so many ways. Brittany is the author of 6 books. Good morning, Kez. Good evening, Brittany. Thank you both for joining us today live on Radio Toni. I'm going to stop talking and let Kez off with the first question. Good morning, Kez.
Good morning, Toni. Good morning, Brittany. What's it like in America at the moment?
Well, it's cloudy and rainy today. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that over here as well. Nothing new for us. So, Brittany, I'd like to ask you your book.
Yeah.
It's called The Day My Soul Ran Away. And it's like looking through the window to the soul of an individual living with borderline personality disorder. What was that like? What was it like writing the book?
Well, I had attended a conference for borderline personality disorder, and after I attended that conference, there was like an acting part of it, where there was actors that would basically act out your story, like your pain, your inner child. And I was inspired to write that book after they acted out my particular story with borderline personality disorder. And so when I wrote that book, it was almost like a healing thing for me. It was almost like kind of using my words and really digging deep down into my soul to pour out the words onto pages, so that way I could kind of give like a visual for those that don't understand what the actual personality disorder is and where it comes from. So I used it kind of like a healing tool, and kind of like a, an exploration of someone's soul that battles with this particular disorder on a daily basis.
Right.
Yeah.
That must have been hard for you.
In a sense, it was, because I had to kind of dig into old wounds in a sense. So I kind of rehashed some old wounds that were very painful. So, but in a sense, I also incorporated my faith in there in the end of the book. So, so that way I could kind of show readers to hold on, because a lot of people take their lives because of this disorder. So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Very true. Toni.
Brittany, were you diagnosed with the personality disorder earlier in your life, or when did that come up for you?
Well, it's a great thing you brought that up. So I was diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder as a child, but I didn't understand, and my family didn't really understand mental illness. So I really wasn't in good hands to understand there was something kind of growing. And so when I got to my adult years and I got out on my own, I was experiencing a lot of distress, a lot of rage, a lot of anger, a lot of chronic emptiness and that, all those things. And it got to the point where a year after I got married, I ended up in the hospital. And so at the age of 29 is when I was finally diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I had no idea that I had this disorder all that time that I was dealing with rage and, anger and all those feelings. I had no idea because I was misdiagnosed, or I wasn't diagnosed fully. And so it's been quite a journey, so to say.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Brittany, Chasing Fireflies is about, and I love the name. I just have to tell you, I love fireflies. There's something really magical about fireflies, and it sparks my imagination and childlike love of. I equate them to fairies. I don't know why. Anyway, Chasing Fireflies is about hope and empowerment. Why was it important for you to write from that perspective, Brittany?
Well, Chasing Fireflies was basically an inspiration of mine from when I stayed at my grandmother's house and I was having a mental health crisis. And so when I was at my grandmother's house, I noticed that there were fireflies that were lighting up the sky. And I realized that I actually wasn't alone. And so so I basically, that book is about a girl named Harmony, and she struggles with mental health, and she finds her sacred space in the field behind Mama's shed. And as she goes through dark tunnels of life and she sinks rock bottom, these fireflies still guide her through her journey of life. And she realizes that the higher power was putting those fireflies in her path for a reason and helped guide her out of some very dark stuff.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah.
That is beautiful.
Thank you.
They do. I don't know if it sounds like it's the same for you. When you see fireflies, there's something magical about them. Crazy little things. They're really, I don't know, magical. They make me smile when I was researching Brittany's stuff the other evening and come across the fireflies. I'm like, oh, I need to ask that question. Thanks, Brittany. Who cares has got the next question for you?
I really liked the heading of your next book. There isn't any monsters under the bed, because that was my big thing when I was a kid. So there was always monsters in the wardrobe, and there was always monsters under the bed, and I drove my parents nuts. my parents were ministers in their church, but I would always, my dad would say, no, nothing here. But I never believed him. And they'd turn the lights out and it was completely dark. And I would put myself through so much anxiety because I always knew there was someone under the bed, but I didn't know who it was.
Yeah. Yes, I remember like running and then jumping onto the bed. you know, thinking they're going to grab
leave your bare feet on the carpet because they might grab you and pull you under the bed. That was my thing.
Yeah, that was it. And so I was sitting here one day and, a lot of like inner child work. So, flying a kite, coloring, blowing bubbles. So I was sitting here and I was, thinking of inner child. And so I brought out my crayons and I'm like, well, what if I just wrote a book or something for children? And I'm no professional artist by any means. So I kind of laughed at my illustrations a little bit, but they make sense for what the story is about. And so the book is about a little boy named Max, and he meets his friend Ted. And Ted helps him overcome his fear of monsters under the bed. And then Max uses these techniques throughout his life, and he's able to overcome, yelling out for mom to come rescue him in his bedroom and stuff. So yeah, so I feel as though mental illness affects all ages of life. And so I was like, well, I've got these books that are kind of geared towards like, adulthood. I got to at least make them for children. So.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I thought that was lovely.
I'm glad that you've gone into children's books as well. Kez has done the same. She's written books for adults, but she's also written books for children. And then when I was thinking about both of you before coming on the show, I'm like, maybe I need to do a children's book about our goats because they have such great stories and such great personalities. And then I'm like, I'll just put that on my whiteboard as something to do one day.
To-do list.
Brittany.
Yeah.
So the title of the next book is really good. It's called Let That Shit Go. Amazing title. What's the inspiration behind this book and how would you like it to help others?
Well, this one actually, it's a mental health journal. So it's actually, I created this one night and I didn't go to bed till it was finished. And so each page has a quote on it that I picked. And they all have to do with trauma, healing, PTSD, inner child. So they're all geared towards those specific categories. And so, it starts off with a quote and then the rest of the page is blank. So it's a journal to kind of, help you release the ugliness of life. And on the back of the journal, I wrote, kind of imagine this journal as like me holding your hand through the ugliness of life rather. And I have them for sale at one of the craft stores in a local mall here in the United States. And it's kind of been like my big hit, to be honest. I actually made a friend because they have my contact information. I've got resources in there that I have found the hard way. So yeah.
Well done, Brittany, because I know from my own healing journey that journaling is particularly important to help process your thoughts and to help get them out of your head, because that's a problem, isn't it? They get stuck in your head and go round and round and round and round and round. But when you get them out by either writing or speaking, that's really a helpful part of the process and a helpful part of the healing. So, and attaching resources to them. And let's face it, in the world, there's never an over supply of good help for mental health. It's a very lonely space. I know through my experience that it always was a very lonely space. And on the other side, you can look back and think that you know, there were people and there was help, but when you're going through it, it's very lonely, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. Very.
And the ability to write and talk and seek resources will help you get through that stuff, and come out the side much better off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
well done, Brittany.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
well done. It's you can be in a very dark place, and when you start writing, I know when I wrote my bio, all the nonsense came out, all the things that came out, and I thought I hadn't thought about that for years. But they popped up, and I was quite surprised that I'd held on to it. Was buried,
Yeah.
but when it's buried, you're still holding on to it. So well done.
Yeah.
I see that you've also written a book called Healing the Light Within Me, the Inner Child. It's about the inner child. Sounds like a powerful book.
Yeah.
Healing the light within me. What is that about?
Well, goodness, that's it is a short story, but I created it as like a memoir of my journey with mental illness. And it was a couple of years ago when I was sitting in a therapist's office, and the lady, older therapist rather, she said, "Well, you know, why don't you find some books about other women who have struggled with mental health, you know, like their own like, you know, journey or what have you." And I was like, well, you know, maybe I guess I could try. And then October of 2019, I was at my grandmother's again, because I needed a safe place. And so I stayed with my grandmother for 3 months, and I literally woke up at 4 a.m. and I was like, I gotta write a book. And so I look back to what that therapist was telling me, and now that I'm writing my own, it just, the way that my life has worked out, it's kind of like stuff kind of happens for the future, I feel like. And so the way that I look at it spiritually anyways. And so so I thought it was scary, because I was like, I don't want to like reveal things about my family, but it was almost like validating what had happened to me. And so there, the details in there are very raw, and they're very raw for a reason. And I also incorporate my faith in there as well, because I think that's also important, to provide hope and inspiration for all the things that I've gone through. So on the front cover is of a little girl, and I was away from my home. I had no internet. All I had was my data on my little cheap smartphone. And I sat there and I took my little pointer finger and I literally drew that little girl with my finger. And the star over the heart is supposed to be like healing the light within me. And that's what the star is supposed to represent on the heart.
Okay.
So.
It's amazing how all these healing modalities, if it's meant to be, it's just going to pop out, no matter how you try and hide it. I think, no, I'm too busy for this. You know, if there's a book there, then there's a book there. And I mean, it's not uncommon when I talk to other authors. It's like, oh no, I woke up at 4 or 3 in the morning and there was a book in my head, and I think, well, that's the time to me, I call that the witching hour, when you've got to get up and you've got to write.
Yes. So I had my first book signing event the day after my gram died last year, and so I was like really like emotional, but I still showed up, and it was actually at a flower shop down the road from where I live. And they were they're Christian and all of that, and so I was sitting there really nervous because I tend to be shy, but so I sat there and there were a few people that came up to me. One lady was like, yeah, my daughter struggles with mental health. And I wrote like a little note in there for her daughter. And then one guy that was there earlier left, and then he came back and he's like, I really want to buy your book. And so, it's been quite the experience for me. I've kind of noticed that a lot of people can resonate. Now that I've got story out there.
Of course.
There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people that all have some sort of mild mental illness, and they will resonate with you.
Yes. Yes.
And every time you're open enough to share from your own perspective, that always helps someone somewhere get through a moment of difficulty. So the final book of yours that I want to talk about today is actually the Mental Illness and Spirituality magazine, Brittany. Tell me about the concept and what you wanted to create with this magazine.
With that, well, I wasn't really sure where it was going to go. But what
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to incorporate, because I've been so focused on, therapists, right? Like licensed clinical,
Yes.
social worker,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
all of that.
Yes. Yeah.
But as I've grown, I've realized that a lot of things have been happening spiritually, that I can't really explain. But I've been more sensitive, I guess. And I don't know if it's because I've hit rock bottom, but I've noticed certain callings. I've noticed people that have come into my life for a particular reason.
Yeah.
Talking with my grandmother last year who was passing away, she was talking a lot about heaven and things like that. So a lot of things I feel spirituality has incorporated into my mental health journey as well.
Mhm.
And so I created that with a story. Well, not story, but like the pages explain like borderline personality, OCD, for those that don't understand like the diagnoses. But
Yeah.
then I also kind of
Yeah.
incorporate, talking of like, spirituality, and like it has some stories,
Mm-hmm.
some stories in there regarding like my baptism, and just kind of like a transformation with some resources and some knowledge incorporated into it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Brittany, is it going to be like an ongoing thing, do you think, the magazine?
Um, I felt like I created it for that intent, but I got so
Yes.
busy with creating, like I got other ideas for like, the other
Yes.
books. And so I got busy with that.
Yes.
And then, so then it kind of, I kind of fell apart with that, but I'm wondering if
Yeah.
it is something, I'll pick up again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Mm. I find that
Well done.
magazines are very attractive, especially with people with busy lives. The
Oh, yeah.
magazine is so worthwhile producing
Yeah.
because we pick up a magazine and we flip through it. We don't actually read it. But
Right.
when you find a column that resonates with you in the magazine, I write for 2 different magazines, and
Huh.
I don't know whether they read, they're always saying write more, but there will be a clientele that will find your column absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well
I
done.
agree. And there's a lot of healing, learning, and wisdom that
Mm.
you can get out to people via the
Yeah.
pages of a magazine, Brittany.
Yeah. I agree.
Now, Brittany, jumping away from being an author, you have a perfume line.
Yes.
And
And
that really made me sit back because I know Toni's got one. I haven't got one. I just use any old thing that goes, I'll use that today. So that really, really resonated with me. How did you do this? Why did you do it?
well, I have to say Toni was my inspiration for that.
Okay.
She was my inspiration. I love smelling nice, and I love there was this yoga mat spray that I got from a spiritual store one day, and it had frankincense and orange blossom and stuff in it.
Oh,
And
lovely.
so yeah, so I was like, I really like that, but it's for like a yoga mat. So I was like, well, what if I, create something a little bit more that I can actually wear on my body? So, so when I realized Toni had created one, I was like, that that's really cool. So, yeah, I wouldn't have known about that unless I had, connected with Toni. So I thank her
Yes.
for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I go to a retreat. Sorry, Toni.
No, I, I was just going to say I was a little apprehensive about the whole creating thing, and then I just sat with it and thought, okay, just spirit guide me about what needs to go in, and that's what I did, and I actually really like my own perfume. I wear it every day.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
I got
It's
my
like me in a
sample.
bottle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
haven't got a perfume. I can't add that to my list, but I do work at a retreat once a
We'll
year, and they
work on
take
that.
their ladies. No doubt you will. I work at a retreat, and they take their ladies away to a perfumery, and it's because I'm working there. I don't get to go on the trip, but yeah, they come back and they just smell divine. But my favorite, I like working with oils,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
where I come from in New Zealand, I was accredited aromatherapist. So do know about oils. My favorite thing is bergamot. I just love
Yeah.
it. Can't get
Yeah.
enough of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I guess that would be the base, almond oil. Look, but as I said, I go into the bath, I think I'll use that today. And my children always say, Mum, you smell like flowers. That's because there's such a mixture on. I've got this and this and this and this.
Oh gosh.
And that's the thing about the Boston Perfumery is that their perfumes are oil-based.
Yeah.
So the smell hangs around all day, and it's so
Yeah.
lovely on your skin as well. So
Yes,
I
yeah.
was really impressed with them, Brittany. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you've done that as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Toni, did you not have the
Next question.
experience? Did you not make
Sorry,
your
Kez?
own up using the oils yourself?
Well, I had an idea of what I wanted to use, and I concocted it at home thinking, well, that's okay. But when the sample came back to me, it was so much better. Like I liked what I'd concocted at home and thought, okay, if it smells like that, it'll be okay. But when I got the actual sample, it smelt better than that. So I was really impressed with what they did, and they're very good to work with. Those
Yeah.
guys from
Well,
Boston
you've given me
Perfumery,
an
they're
interest now.
Yes, Kez, I thought the same thing. I'll have to do an intro because the process is really nice, and the way that they guide you to get your formula is great, and they've got a whole range of things to choose from,
Yeah.
whole lot of aromas, and yeah. So educative as well as creative is what I thought. Brittany,
Fabulous.
going away from the books and the perfume line, you're also an ordained minister. How
Yeah.
did that come about, and why did you go down that particular track?
Well, I was sitting here and I been taking out my Bible a lot and reading it, and I thought to myself, well, what if I was an ordained minister? And I just kind of sat with it and thought about it for a little while. And with the mental health, I've really been trying to find my purpose. I've written books and things, but I wanted a little bit more, I guess, to feel like I was fulfilling some type of purpose. And so I started researching, how do you become an ordained minister? And so I searched the AMM.org. It's the American Marriage Ministries. And I was able to get ordained through there. And they sent me my certificate, my booklet, and all of that. And I haven't performed any weddings yet, to be honest. But I
Yeah.
do put it out there for those that are looking for someone to officiate a wedding. I can remember my own wedding. It was quite stressful because I did
Yeah.
everything myself. So I
Yeah.
wanted to kind of lend a hand to others that might need help in that area. Because I know how stressful it was for myself. So
yeah, they are stressful
Yeah,
things. Why can't we all just elope?
yeah,
The
right.
best thing
That,
ever.
that too. I've heard that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like just get it
Yeah.
over and done with, and we're married. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Ta-
the reason that the reason was kind of more that you wanted to help officiate weddings rather than be in front of a congregation. It was more around the ceremonial type
Yeah.
stuff, Brittany. Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Well done. Another thing that you can add to that illustrious career of yours.
Thank you.
a lovely smelling ordained minister that writes books.
I'll have to add that to my
Write
bio.
good books.
I wish we had, I've written kids' books, and I'd love to have books that smell nice. Wouldn't that be lovely? We could invent something like that.
Yeah.
So you have, and I absolutely adored this title. Toni's written that you have another book coming out called The Layers of an Onion.
Yes.
That is a fabulous title.
Well,
Isn't it good?
I don't like onions. I hate onions.
Ah.
But where that came from, I was in a severe mental health crisis last year. So I always resort back to that because I feel like I did a lot of soul searching during that process too. And so I was on the phone with a therapist one day, and I was in some very debilitating anxiety. And so I was on the phone with a therapist, and the therapist was explaining to me that our souls or our beings are like the layer of an onion.
Mhm.
Trauma gets stored in the layers. And so this year I was sitting here at my laptop, and I said, well, what if I wrote a book about the layers of an onion? And so that is about trauma and how it gets stored. And, I think I'm kind of still, I'm still writing it, but I think it's going to kind of end with like how to kind of, release it in a sense, but kind of recognizing how it gets stored, why it gets stored, and, the subconscious, the conscious, and, inner child. So it's a work in progress, but yeah, that's my next title that I'm working on. And so I kind of just, I don't know if it's like I have to go through a little bit more in life to kind of incorporate, what I've learned. So
Yeah.
I don't know when that's going to be finished, to be quite honest, but yeah, that's my next book. So
Fabulous. I love the title. It was just really attracted me because one of my next book is into spirituality, and I use that terminology of losing the layers. So as soon as I saw, I thought, someone's actually got it. Someone's got it. Yeah. Good on you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Brittany, before I ask you the next question, I wondered if we could take just a few minutes, if you feel comfortable, of course, to tell the audience a little bit about your journey. So for Kez and I, family dysfunction has played out across both of our lives in ways that have been less than helpful. And so if you're comfortable, are you comfortable talking about family dysfunction and how it's played out in your life as well?
Yeah. So a lot of it happened in childhood. My mom and dad never got married, and they weren't believers. My dad was an addict and an alcoholic. My mom was in rehab before she had me. I grew up in AA meetings. My dad abandoned me at the age of about 6 years old. At the same time, my mom was in some very abusive relationships, whether they were mental, physical. And I grew up in a 2-bedroom, small, low-income apartment. And I witnessed my mom in a very physical abusive relationship. I got into my first high-speed chase when I was a little girl.
Oh.
I witnessed police knocking the door down, looking for him in the middle of the night. One time, I'd gotten home from my babysitter's house with my mom, and
Mm-hmm.
the abusive man was waiting behind a rock that all of us kids played on, and we didn't know he was hiding behind that. We thought he was inside, and he comes running out behind that, punches the windshield on my side because he was trying to target me. And I was scared as heck, and the windshield shattered. And as I got older, I realized I was scared of the dark, but I didn't know exactly where it was coming from. But I started digging and realizing that is why. I would run into my house where I live now. I'd run in, miss the front steps, and I would just fly in here because I was afraid someone was going to grab me in between where my car is parked and my front door.
Yes.
And so I experienced a lot of that, and nobody really knew what was going on behind my mom's closed door. All they saw was me dressed perfectly, with my hair perfectly done, and my meals made and all of that. They didn't really know what was going on behind closed doors. My mom finally got a divorce from that man, but it continued. He would still show up to the house when my mom wasn't home and would yell up to the window looking for my mom. So I experienced a lot of that. And then also my grandmother was in 3 abusive relationships as well. So it was kind of like the ancestral generational trauma was just being passed down. And so as I got older, I bought my first home at the age of 20. I lived with my my now husband, but boyfriend at the time. We've been married we've been together for 11 years, married 3. And we lived in a in-law apartment, had no shower, no toilet, nothing. And my family knew that I was living that way. And so I was working full time, and I said, you know what, I'm sick of living like this. And I went to the library and I found my home where I live now, and I bought it at the age of 20, a mobile home, and paid 2 cars off by myself. And I've basically done everything myself with no family financial help, and the support that I've gotten, they've been supported to an extent, but it's been more like gossip. So I kind of backed away because and so I've used the Bible a lot because I really have had a hard time with forgiveness. So I kind of had to incorporate, well, they're God's children too, and I'm God's child. So it's like I've had to kind of keep that in my forefront, but at the same token, a lot of things that have happened to me has created me so much problems in my life, in my jobs, my relationships, the beliefs about myself, the instability. And so there's a lot of anger and hurt from that. And it's just, I haven't really been able to have the relationship that I want with them because of it. And the last thing I want to say is, I've gotten older, my dad, I've let him come back into my life. But it's been challenging because he'll just escape whenever he pleases. And I have been worried about him. I've found him at motels. I found him intoxicated at some apartments. And I've even gone to this hotel he was at to provide him hygiene products and food, and he just turned me away and said he doesn't use that. He uses Tresemme shampoo. So I've been rejected a lot and betrayed. I've said some very hurtful things to my family recently because of my anger and my my understanding of the personality disorder. And they don't want to talk to me because they are, so it's been really challenging, and it's been really, really challenging. And then 2 months after I graduated high school, I lost my high school boyfriend to a tragic car accident. Actually 5 minutes from where I live now, he crashed into a tree by accident. And so it's been a lot of loss, rejection, and
a lot of fear, a lot of being afraid of what's going to happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not good. But, you're
No.
looking, by the way you talk and that, you're healing very well. And the writing can only help.
Yes.
And the perfume.
Yes. Perfume. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brittany, I actually believe that those of us that have suffered from trauma and dysfunction, we make the world a better place by actually speaking openly about those things.
Yeah.
Both Kez and I have suffered from family backlash because that's what we do, because we've written about those things. Um, it sounds too like you've had some family backlash from the things that you've spoken about and written about. I'm just wondering, are you okay? And have you got strategies or have you got support around you to help you deal and heal with that?
It's been challenging.
Yes.
I've reached out to 2 churches, one that I got married in, but the pastor there just kind of got to a point where he thought there was, I needed more help than he could give me. And
Yeah.
then there was another pastor that I saw, that I felt actual supernatural. I felt, the energy. And so I talked with him
Yes.
a little bit, but, he just said, open your Bible, read this verse. And he sent me some songs and things.
Yeah.
And then I recently connected with a family friend who is in her 90s. And,
Yeah.
she calls me a lot and she prays with me over the phone, but that was recent. But other than
Yeah.
that, I don't feel like I really I don't know. It's really hard because
It's difficult. Yes, I was just going to say,
Mm.
Brittany,
yeah,
the only way that I got through it is having people to talk to who actually have experienced
yeah,
backlash from
Yeah.
family dysfunction when you've had
Yeah.
the courage to talk
Right.
about it. So my support, Tez is actually one of those people because I know that she understands what that backlash feels like.
yeah.
But on the other hand, there's also that passion and drive to keep talking about it simply
Definitely.
because there's so many people out there that need to hear you talk about it so they can feel okay and so they can feel supported. So,
Mhm.
so Brittany, that's exactly, I think it's powerful for you to keep talking the way that you talk, to keep
Mm.
sharing from that point and saying, this is really tough. This is actually really shitty and this is really
Mm.
hard to manage. But knowing, okay, Toni in Australia knows what I'm talking about, Kez in
Mm.
Australia knows, and having a bit of a support around you that you can just email and go, oh my God, this happened today. I'm feeling a bit shattered about this.
Mm.
And and to keep talking about it because other people need to know
Yeah.
that dealing with family dysfunction is probably one of the most difficult
Mm.
things that you
I
can do
agree.
because inherently we are taught to inherently we love our parents no matter what happened, and I
Right,
can openly and honestly say I still love my parents, but I
right.
can no longer have a close relationship with them. I can
Mm.
no longer talk to them on a daily basis because their response to me is so toxic and that is
Mhm.
unhelpful for me
Mm.
to live my best life.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
Brittany, you've got so much wisdom, knowledge that to share with the world via your books and the people that you talk to, that it becomes then important about protecting you and your healing. And being quite a way through my own healing journey, protecting that healing
Mm.
is
Mm.
becomes
Very big.
most.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's something that we don't often talk about. I'm currently listening to Oprah's book called What Happened to You, and it talks about
Yeah.
trauma and dysfunction and the layers and the healing and what happens at various levels of our childhood. And she actually made me feel really quite good, because she said that part and parcel of that trauma dysfunction stuff as from childhood makes us people pleasers, and that she took until she was in her 50s to realize that she didn't have to please people anymore, that she could say no, and that she could put boundaries around her life, and to protect her. And I thought,
Yes.
wow, if that's good for Oprah, that's good enough
Yeah.
for the rest of it, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
But you're taught that, you know, it's selfish to care for yourself. But at the end of the day, if you don't care for Brittany, if you don't look after Brittany, and if you don't make sure Brittany is loved and supported, then you're no good to anyone else. And you've got
That's
a
right.
powerful message.
Yeah.
Right.
And
That's right.
Kez and I have had many conversations personally and privately about these things, and realize and recognize how important it is that we keep telling these stories, and that we have support from people who know and understand, so that we can continue to tell those stories, Brittany. So I don't want you to lose sight of the fact that there are other people out there loving and supporting you from afar, to tell and keep telling, to keep writing and keep telling those stories that the world needs to hear. And Kez, your story is very similar as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is. My parents, within their own families, were very dysfunctional. And then I found that I blame the DNA, because it came down through my sister. Now, if we'd have recognized mental illness then, maybe my life wouldn't have been so hard. And I'm talking about everything being done behind mum and dad's back. So she literally tormented me, and my mother didn't believe me. So I was covered in bruises and like scratches, but mum always said I was a clumsy child, but really I wasn't. And so when I grew up, I took that feeling with me of insecurity, and I expected my first husband to be a strong man. Well, he wasn't. I married into another hugely dysfunctional family. And it wasn't until I married my second husband many, many years later that I realized what dysfunctional meant.
Yeah.
And it was a huge step for me to realize, wow, look what I honor the path that I had walked, because it taught me so much, Brittany. But life does teach you. And I found the biggest thing for me before I started writing a book was I would sit up at night time when I'd gotten over the fear of what was under the bed. I would sit up at night time and journal. I would journal my thoughts for the day. And I found as long as I talked to the inner child, to the inner Kez, I started coming right. I started to more believe in myself, that I wasn't. And I was taught I was stupid, and I was fat and stupid. That's what I was taught. So as you get older, although you see a different person in the mirror, and you can communicate as an intelligent person, you believe that inner voice that says, I've really got nothing to offer and I'm stupid. And so therefore, when I did blossom, I blossomed with vengeance. I thought the world's going to hear my story. And all of a sudden I thought my family's going to open up and be all loving and kind. And just the opposite happened. So my parents were dead by then. I could only write the book once mum and dad had passed away. But and my sister had passed away, because she was really, really not mentally well all her life. But I was wise enough later on in life to recognize that. Yeah. And I seem to draw the mentally unwell towards me, because someone said, you have a light that shines. Well, we all have that light. It's not just me. We all have that light, but it's the inner child saying, look, this is what happened. Let's get over it, journal it, and you'll find yourself brightening up. I mean, I'm not a therapist or a counselor in any way. This is my journey. But I do feel that if you journal, and most probably you do, being the writer you are, but I really think we should aim, especially you with your, I can see the kindness there, that you need to aim towards the children. Aim towards the children, like Toni wants to write about her goats. Did you have an animal? Did you have a pet as a child, talk about that. Bring the love, feel the love towards your pet, whether it was watching the birds or you actually had a bird or a cat or a dog. Feel the love, and write about it. And that is another healing way.
Yes. Yes. I agree. It's so like another thing that I was thinking about when you were mentioning like the birds and stuff, sometimes, when I feel like my blood is boiling and I'm just so overwhelmed about something, and like I just hear the birds outside, and I'm just like, wow. And it just redirects me to like this calmness. Or if I go outside and I just kind of surround myself around trees or something, I sense like this, the calmness, because the materialistic world and the busy life and stuff like that can really just deplete the energy out of me.
That's
And
right.
So
Yes.
You understand, we can actually, there's people hold that word busy like a badge.
Yeah.
And really all it's doing is it's destroying us.
Yeah.
We need, as spirit people, our spirit inside needs the calmness of nature.
Yeah.
It's there.
Without doubt.
We just have to walk out the door. It's right there. It's free.
It is. It is.
What's next? What have you got besides the new book? What else have you got planned for the next little while?
Well, I do have a mental health author event coming up on August 20th, but it's in the United States. But it's August 20th. It's at a local park, Henry Law Park. And I'm going to be there speaking. I have a presentation, my books. I also have a special guest going to be there as well. His name is Jim Scott, and he decided to drive home drunk one day from a party and got into a car crash. And so basically left him with a traumatic brain injury. So he actually published a book regarding his regarding his story about his choices that he made to kind of help other people not make that same mistake as him. So I invited him to speak along with me, because I figure, well, if people do show up to this event, I'm pretty sure they're going to have some type of, mental health or know somebody or what have you. And then I also bought these glow sticks. And so to kind of light up the night in honor of those that have lost their lives to mental illness. So that's what I have there. I also do my own little, radio thing, Rise Above. I created that because Rise Above, Rise Above. So I created that. So I do speak on there occasionally. Just trying to finish up the layers of an onion, but I don't really have anything big. I'm always looking for opportunities to get my story out there. So
it's been wonderful to have you on the show, Brittany, and I'm really grateful that we connected and that you had the time and space to come on the show today, because as you know, I just think it's so important not only to support authors who are writing the books that'll change the world, and your books also leave a legacy, so they outlive you, and your story will outlive lots of other people, because you've had the courage to write, which is the beauty of writing a book, because it will stay for generations, and in generations there might be people reading stuff that you've written and getting help and solace and hope from what they've read. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to Kez and I on the show today. For those listening live online, we have all of Brittany's links to all of her stories, books, her website, her perfume. And if you're driving while you're listening, then jump onto radiotoni.com, look for Kez and I's show, and you will find the links to Brittany's stuff there as well. If you're suffering from a mental health illness and you're at crisis point, we just ask that you go and talk to someone as soon as possible. And additionally, if you're looking for help from anyone, go and seek that help, and make sure that you connect with Brittany and grab her books. We've got the links again live online and on radiotoni.com, so you can buy any of her amazing books from those channels. Brittany and Kez, thank you so much for being on the
Thank
show
you.
today.
Thank you,
And
Brittany.
a wonderful
Thank you.
conversation. Brittany, all the best. Take care, stay safe, and stay in contact. Wonderful listeners, that is the end of our show today. We'll be back next week with another conversation with Kez, where we talk to another author, Brittany Eldridge. Thank you so much. And that's
Thank
our lot
you.
for this week. Bye, Kez. Bye, Brittany. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.